I was peeling potatoes when Karen called and said, "If you want to come for Thanksgiving, you could do the dishes." Then she hung up. Something cracked inside me at that moment. My thumb was still wet from the starch, the paring knife resting on the counter next to half of a Yukon Gold. I didn't even rinse it. The house was quiet, just me and Linda. The TV was on low in the living room, but even that hum felt far away now. Her words weren't just rude. They were deliberate, sharp, a slap to the face. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, but not the first time she'd made Linda feel small. This was a habit, something we both learned to swallow. And Karen, she knew exactly what she was doing. No misunderstanding, no fatigue, no stress, just pure intent to put Linda in her place. I stood there, phone still in my hand, ears ringing. She didn't wait for a response, not even fake politeness, just a demand, as if my wife were a maid reporting for duty. Linda wasn't Karen's mother-in-law. She was a chore Karen didn't want to deal with. From the armchair, Linda looked over at me. She had heard Karen's tone. She always could. At first, she didn't say anything. She just reached over and switched off the TV. We'd been married for 37 years, and I could tell something in her shifted in that moment. Maybe it's time we stop calling first. I finally said, and just like that, everything we'd ignored for years was suddenly right there in the room with us. Linda didn't cry. She didn't yell. She typed one word back to Karen. Enjoy. Cold. Final. A single word holding decades of quiet sadness. Behind it was a storm of all the things she never said. The moment she pushed aside. The time she told herself to rise above it. To keep the peace. Karen never wanted Linda around. On good days, she was distant. On bad days, condescending. Linda would bring over her homemade casseroles, and Karen would give a tight smile. We already have plenty of food, but thanks anyway. If Linda offered to babysit, Karen would respond, they already have their routine. I don't want to confuse them. I remember the Christmas when Linda had sewn matching pajamas for all the grandkids. Karen smiled and said, "Oh, Target had such a great sale this year, but effort is nice too." Then she handed Linda a trash bag full of wrapping paper and said, "Here, I know you love cleaning up." Everyone laughed. Even I gave an awkward chuckle, just to smooth things over. Linda laughed too, but later I realized that kind of laugh leaves scars. Linda kept showing up anyway. She believed family meant being there, even when it hurt. She cleaned Karen's kitchen while Karen scrolled on her phone. She folded laundry while Karen gossiped with friends. She offered help and got silence in return. Once, Linda called Karen just to say hello. Karen answered and said, "Can you text? I'm busy." Busy, but not too busy to post later on social media about her perfect family day. So when Karen said, "If you want to come for Thanksgiving, you can do the dishes," she didn't break Linda. She simply tore the curtain down on a truth we'd avoided. Linda was never part of Karen's family picture. I went into the kitchen, leaned on the counter, and said, "What if we just disappear for the holidays?" Linda looked at me. "What do you mean?" "Switzerland. That villa you showed me, the one with glass walls and a view of the mountains." She blinked. I'd remembered. She'd shown me that listing last spring, dreaming out loud, and then she never mentioned again because there were always obligations, dinners, kids, expectations. But what if this year there weren't? That night, we sat at the laptop together. We booked it. A week in the mountains. Just us. No announcements. No apologies. No explanations. We didn't need permission. And as every mile grew between us and Karen's kitchen, something returned to Linda. Her breath, her posture, her peace. Karen thought she was in control. She thought our silence meant we needed her approval. She didn't realize we were done. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. The snow was already falling when our taxi wound its way up the narrow mountain roads. Thick, slow flakes swirled past the windows, each turn revealing another stretch of pines dusted in white. The villa looked like something from a dream, floor-to-ceiling glass, a soft golden glow spilling out from inside, smoke curling from a chimney. Linda didn't say much during the ride. She just kept her hand on mine, her thumb moving slowly back and forth across my knuckles. After so many years of walking on eggshells in our own family, the silence between us was finally warm instead of heavy. The driver carried our bags to the door. I unlocked it, and a rush of heat and pine scent wrapped around us. Inside, the place was perfect. Stone fireplace, heavy wool blankets, a kitchen that looked out over the mountains. I set the bags down, and Linda just stood there for a moment, taking it all in. "You know," she said softly, "I thought I'd feel guilty. And I don't." That night we made coffee, sat by the fire, and watched the snow pile up outside. No awkward small talk, no tense dinners, no pretending not to notice Karen's little digs. For the first time in years, Linda's shoulders weren't hunched forward. She looked taller somehow. The next morning, she opened her laptop, not to check messages, but to write. I watched her type for a long time, the firelight flickering across her face. "What are you working on?" I asked. "A list," she said without looking up. "A list of what?" She finally turned the screen toward me. At the top, in bold, she typed, "Things I've done for them." It went on for page after page. Canceled our anniversary trip to babysit when Karen forgot she had a conference. Quietly paid off their second car loan when Matthew said they were stressed. Bought their first washer and dryer because Karen said they were drowning in laundry. Sewed all the curtains in their first house. Cleaned up after every holiday meal, even when my knees hurt. Saved every drawing from the grandkids that they'd thrown out. Arrived early, stayed late, always brought food. Stayed polite even when Karen was cold. When I got to the bottom, I realized what I was really looking at. A lifetime of trying to earn a place that should have been freely given. She never saw any of this, Linda said quietly. To her, I was just available. Someone she could use when she needed something. I felt something deep in my chest then. A mix of anger and shame. Shame because I'd let it happen for so long, thinking I was keeping the peace. I remembered dinners where Karen would lean toward Matthew, whisper something, and then he'd glance at Linda with that strange mix of guilt and distance, as if being her son was something he had to apologize for. The worst part? Linda had believed it. She'd started offering less, speaking less, shrinking herself just to avoid the sting. And even then, Karen still found ways to cut deeper. "You didn't bring anything today? That's fine. The kids don't really eat your casseroles anyway." "Oh," we started a new tradition. Just the four of us. You understand, right? Linda always smiled, nodded, said, "Of course." But I could see in her eyes that she didn't understand. Now, sitting here in the mountains, I watched her let the anger in. Real anger. The kind she'd been taught to swallow her whole life. "You know what?" she said finally. "We're done going back to that table." It wasn't a threat. It was a decision. We didn't post a single photo. We didn't call, text, or explain. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke to the sound of wind sweeping across the valley. The sun was still low, glinting off the snow-covered peaks. Linda was already up, wrapped in a blanket, sipping coffee by the glass wall. I joined her. "Think they've noticed?" "Oh, they've noticed," she said without looking at me. "They just won't admit it yet." Sure enough, by noon, my phone lit up, not from Karen, but from Matthew. A single text. "Are you two okay? Karen says you didn't respond to her invite." I stared at it for a moment. Linda took the phone from my hand, typed, "We're fine. Enjoy your holiday." Then she set it face down on the table. That was it. No explanation. No defense. Around 4 in the afternoon, another message came, longer this time. "Mom's upset. She says it was rude to just disappear. She made extra food. The kids miss you. Can you at least FaceTime?" Linda read it and handed it to me. "Do you want to?" she asked. "No," I said. "Not today." We spent the rest of the evening by the fire, watching the snow fall. No noise. No guilt. No pretending. The next day, the silence broke, but not in the way I expected. My sister, Julia, called from back home. "What's going on?" she asked immediately. "Karen's been telling everyone you two decided you were too good for family holidays now." I laughed. "Of course she did." Julia hesitated. "Look, people are starting to think you're making a statement." We're not making a statement. I said, we're living our lives. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the full truth. We were making a statement. Just not for them. For us. A reminder that we didn't have to keep showing up where we weren't wanted. On the third day, Matthew finally called. I answered, Dad, I don't understand. Mom says you were mad about something she said, but she doesn't know what. I almost laughed at the sheer absurdity. Matt, do you really not know? After all these years. There was a pause. She can be blunt sometimes. But she doesn't mean. Stop. My voice was sharper than I intended. Your mother has been treated like an outsider in her own family for over a decade. She has been polite, helpful, kind, every single time. And Karen has never once met her halfway. Dad, it's not that simple. It is, I said. It's exactly that simple. And the worst part? You've watched it happen. There was a long silence on the line. Finally, Matthew said, So you're not coming back for Christmas? No, Matt, we're not. After I hung up, Linda was quiet for a while. Then she said, Do you think he'll ever see it? I looked out at the endless stretch of snow and mountains. Maybe, but we can't wait for that anymore. That night, we lit candles, cooked together, and ate at the little wooden table by the window. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering every track, every road, every path leading back. And for the first time in years, I realized we weren't just visiting somewhere new. We were leaving somewhere behind. The third morning in the villa, the snow had stopped, leaving behind a world that looked untouched. The sun reflected off the white slope so brightly that it filled the entire living room with light. Linda stood by the window, hands wrapped around her mug, watching skiers in the distance. I used to think, she said quietly, that if I was just nicer, she'd let me in. I didn't say anything. She didn't need my words. She needed the space to let them out. I remember one Easter, she went on. I made baskets for the kids, real baskets, painted them, filled them with toys, candy, even little books. I thought it would be a tradition. Do you remember what she said? I did, but I let her speak. She looked at them and said, Oh, you didn't have to go through all that trouble. We usually just give them chocolate bars. They don't care about baskets. And then she handed the baskets to the kids like they were leftovers. Linda's voice didn't shake. She wasn't crying. That almost made it worse. Another time, it had been Thanksgiving, 5 years ago. Linda had spent 2 days baking pies. When we arrived, Karen took them, set them on the counter, and later served a store-bought cheesecake instead. The kids liked this better, she'd said. We'd driven home that night in silence. Linda sat down next to me on the couch now, curling her feet under her. I told myself for years that family is worth the effort. But what I really meant was, they were worth the effort, and maybe they never were. I put my arm around her, and for a long time we just sat there, listening to the crackle of the fire. Later that day, we walked into the little village at the bottom of the hill. Cobblestone streets wound between old stone buildings, and every cafe smelled of fresh bread and coffee. We stopped at one with a terrace, ordered pastries, and watched the mountains turn gold as the sun dropped behind them. For the first time in a long time, Linda laughed without forcing it. A real laugh, the kind that makes her eyes crinkle and her shoulders relax. That night, after we returned to the villa, I found her sitting at the desk with a notebook. What are you writing now? I asked. A letter, she said, to myself. Not to Matthew? She shook her head. No, I think I've said all I needed to say to him. This is for me, to remember what I promised myself here. She read the first lines out loud. You do not have to earn love by breaking yourself into smaller pieces. You do not have to stay where you are only tolerated. You are allowed to walk away. The words hit me harder than I expected. Maybe because I knew they weren't just for her. They were for both of us. The following day, another message came from Matthew. It was longer, softer this time. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said. I guess I didn't realize how much Mom's behavior affected Linda. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do to fix it, but I'd like to talk when you get back. Linda read it. then placed the phone face down again. "We'll see," she murmured. And for the first time, I realized she wasn't sure she wanted to fix it at all. The flight home felt longer than the one to Switzerland, not because of the hours, but because of the waiting for us. Linda didn't say much on the plane. She stared out the window most of the time, her face calm but unreadable. When we landed, the cold here felt different, sharper, more restless. Our driveway was dusted with frost, the porch light left on, probably by one of the neighbors. I unlocked the door, and we stepped back into the life we'd walked away from for a week. There were envelopes on the table, mostly bills, and one plain white card. No name on the front. Inside, a single line in Karen's handwriting. "I don't understand why you would do this to us." Linda read it, closed it without comment, and set it down. The next day, Matthew called again. His voice was cautious, almost formal. "Dad, can you and Linda come over? The kids want to see you." Linda looked at me. I could tell she was debating. Finally, she said, "Yes, but only for an hour." When we arrived, the front door opened before we even reached it. The grandkids ran out first, hugging Linda so hard she nearly lost her balance. She knelt down, kissing their hair, breathing them in like she'd been underwater too long. Then Karen appeared in the doorway. Her smile was tight, eyes scanning Linda like she was checking for weaknesses. "Well," she said, "look who decided to join us." Linda stood up slowly. "We're here for the kids," she said evenly. We stepped inside. The house smelled of cinnamon and something roasting in the oven. It should have felt warm, but the air was heavy. Matthew tried to fill it with small talk, asking about our trip, nodding too quickly at our answers. But Karen kept circling the conversation back to Thanksgiving. "So," she said, pouring coffee without asking if we wanted any, "you didn't think it was important to let us know you weren't coming?" I had to make extra food, and then explain to the kids why their grandparents didn't show up. Linda didn't flinch. "We didn't come because we didn't want to," she said. "It's that simple." Karen's mouth tightened. "That's rude." "What's rude," Linda said, her voice steady, "is treating someone like they don't belong for years and expecting them to keep showing up." The room went quiet. Matthew shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between us. The kids, sensing the tension, wandered off to playroom. "I don't know what you mean," Karen said finally, her tone all innocence. Linda glanced at me, and I could see the years of swallowed words pressing at her lips. She took a deep breath. "You know exactly what I mean, and I'm done pretending you don't." Karen crossed her arms, leaning against the kitchen counter like she owned not just the house, but the truth. "I really don't understand where all this is coming from," she said. "I've always treated you with respect." Linda let out a small, humorless laugh. "Respect? Karen, do you really want to start listing things?" "Because I can. I remember every single one." Matthew opened his mouth, but Linda lifted a hand. "No, Matt, you need to hear this too." She took a step closer to Karen, not aggressive, but deliberate. "The first time I met you, I brought you a scarf I knitted myself. You smiled, said it was cute, and then I saw you drop it into the Goodwill box in your garage the next week. You didn't even take the tag off." Karen's face reddened. "That's not." "Then," Linda continued, her voice unwavering, "there was your wedding shower. I offered to help, and you told me, 'We have it covered, but you can bring the cutlery if you want.' Like I was an outsider who might be useful for chores." Karen's jaw tightened. "Do you remember when your oldest was born?" Linda's voice softened, but it cut even deeper. "I knitted a blanket for her. I never saw her with it once. But the store-bought one from your college friend? That was in every photo." Matthew shifted in his seat. "Mom." Linda turned to him. "And you, Matt, you laughed when she said those things. You told me I was overreacting, that I should give her time. It's been 15 years. How much time does someone need to stop being cruel?" Karen's voice sharpened. "Cruel? I think you're being dramatic. Cruel is pretending someone doesn't exist at family gatherings," Linda said. "Cruel is making sure the grandkids call me Linda instead of Grandma because you don't like the sound of it. Cruel is telling me not to bring food to Thanksgiving because we don't want leftovers, and then serving store-bought pie. The room was heavy with silence. Even the ticking of the kitchen clock seemed louder. Linda's breathing was steady. Her hands relaxed at her sides. I came today because I love my grandchildren, but I'm done pretending we're a family in the way you want. If I come to future events, it will be for them, not for you. And if you keep making it impossible, then we won't come at all. Matthew rubbed his forehead, his voice low. Karen, maybe you need to think about this. Karen's eyes flashed, but for once, she didn't have a quick reply. Linda reached for her coat. The kids can visit us anytime. They know our door is open. But I won't stand in a kitchen where I'm not wanted. She walked out without slamming the door, which somehow made it louder. We were halfway to the car when the front door opened again. Wait. Karen's voice cut through the cold air. You're not walking out after throwing that kind of tantrum. Linda turned slowly, her face calm. That wasn't a tantrum. That was the truth. Karen stepped outside, pulling her cardigan tighter, but her voice was rising. No, the truth is you've never liked me. You've been undermining me since day one. Every time you buy the kids something, it's like you're trying to outdo me. Every time you visit, you act like this is your house, like I'm just in the way. That's not true, Linda said, still steady. Oh, really? Karen took a step forward. You think I don't notice the way you fix the way I do things? The way you tell them stories about your family, like it's better than mine? You make them feel like they have to choose between us. Matthew appeared in the doorway, looking caught between referee and hostage. Karen. No, Matt, she snapped. I'm done being painted as the villain here. She's been passive-aggressive for years, and now she's finally said it out loud, because she thinks she can turn you against me. Linda shook her head slowly. I don't need to turn anyone against you, Karen. You've been doing that work yourself. Karen's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing. If you keep this up, the kids aren't going to understand why Grandma Linda doesn't come around anymore. And guess who they're going to blame? That one landed heavy. I could see Matthew flinch. Linda's voice stayed even, but quieter now. If you ever use them as leverage against me, you'll regret it. Not because I'll fight you, because one day they'll be old enough to see exactly what you did. Karen scoffed, crossing her arms. Or maybe they'll see that I was protecting them from someone who couldn't respect their parents. Linda didn't answer. She just opened the car door and got in. I followed, my stomach tight, my hands cold on the steering wheel. As we pulled away, I glanced in the mirror. Karen was still standing in the driveway, arms folded, face set like stone. Matthew stood behind her, eyes on the ground. Linda stared out the window the entire drive home. When we pulled into our driveway, she said quietly, almost to herself, "She's not done. This is just the opening move." The first week after the confrontation was quiet. Too quiet. No calls, no texts from Matthew, no messages from the grandkids. Linda pretended she was fine. She busied herself with gardening, sorting photos, baking, but I could tell she was listening for the phone every time it buzzed. Most of the time, it wasn't them. Then, little signs started to appear. First came the accidental exclusion. A neighbor, Nancy, stopped by to return a baking dish and said, "It was so nice seeing your grandkids at the park last weekend. That little talent show they put on, adorable." Linda froze. "What talent show?" Nancy blinked. "Oh." Karen said it was just for their friends and close family. The next day, a cousin called, asking if Linda was feeling better. "Karen mentioned you've been overwhelmed lately, taking some space. I hope you're okay." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm fine," she said, but I could see her hands trembling slightly as she hung up. By the end of the second week, the kids' drawings that usually came in the mail stopped arriving. When Linda asked Matthew about it, he hesitated. "They've just been busy, Mom." Then she saw it on Karen's Facebook. Photos of the kids making cookies, smiling with flour on their cheeks. The caption read, "Nothing better than family time with the people who are always there for you." No mention of us. Not even a tag. Linda stared at the screen for a long time before setting the phone down. She's erasing us, she said softly. And she wasn't wrong. At church, someone asked if we'd moved away because they never see you with the kids anymore. At the grocery store, another friend told Linda, Karen says you've been traveling a lot, maybe too much to commit to family events. It wasn't outright lies, just shaped truths, carefully carved to leave us out. One evening, as I came into the living room, I heard Linda's voice from the kitchen, low and raw. She was on the phone. I love you, sweetheart. No, I'm not mad at you. I just wish I could see you more. Oh, your mom says I'm tired a lot? Well, maybe she's right, but I'm never too tired for you. She hung up, sat down at the table, and stared at her hands. She's turning them, she whispered, bit by bit, and they don't even know it's happening. I wanted to tell her it would pass. But Karen wasn't the kind of person to let go once she had control. That night, Linda couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., she sat on the edge of the bed and said, if we don't do something soon, they're going to grow up thinking we just stopped caring. And in the darkness, I realized Karen's war wasn't about pushing us away. It was about rewriting the story so that when the kids looked back, they'd never even question why we were gone. Linda woke early, dressed quietly, and slipped out before the house stirred. Her plan was simple. She would visit Matthew and the kids directly. No calls, no messages. She just wanted to be there in their world, even if only for a moment. The drive felt endless. Every red light was a countdown. Every passing car a reminder to risk. Karen could be watching. Karen could call Matthew before Linda got there. When she arrived, she saw them through the window. The kids were laughing, building a pillow fort. Matthew looked distracted but happy. And then Karen. She was there, too, sitting calmly with a cup of coffee, smiling. Linda's chest tightened. Her instinct was to turn back. But something inside her, something older, stronger, pushed her forward. She knocked. The kids' faces lit up. Grandma! Matthew's smile faltered, unsure. Karen's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Linda stepped inside. She hugged her grandchildren, letting them feel her warmth, her presence. Words tumbled out of her. How much she missed them, how much she loved them, how she had been hurt but still wanted to be part of their lives. Karen said nothing at first. Then quietly she spoke. Linda, you don't get to just show up and pretend nothing happened. Linda's voice shook, but she stood firm. I'm not pretending. I'm here for them, not for you, not for a fight. For a moment, everything was silent. The kids looked between the two women. Matthew's jaw tightened. Then, unexpectedly, the kid spoke. Grandma, we want both of you, said the older child. Why can't we just all be together? The words hung in the air, heavier than any argument, softer than any apology. Karen's face changed, not with anger, but something else, something Linda hadn't expected. Regret, fear, and maybe even doubt. Matthew swallowed hard. Maybe we've been listening to the wrong story. And then, as quickly as it started, Karen left the room. She didn't slam a door. She didn't yell. She just stepped outside, leaving the window slightly open, her shadow falling across the sunlit floor. Linda hugged her grandchildren tighter. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if Karen would forgive her, if Matthew would fully trust her again, or if the war was truly over. But in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Because sometimes the unexpected isn't final victory or defeat. It's a chance to rewrite the story. And this story was far from over. A few weeks after that day, the atmosphere in the house had changed. Linda no longer moved around in secrecy, but now her presence was gentle, a quiet part of everyday life. The children laughed as Linda baked pies with them, and for the first time in a long while, she felt she truly belonged. Matthew watched with a cautious smile, occasionally giving Linda a small nod, as if to say, we could be a family just differently. Karen didn't disappear completely. She still visited from time to time, quietly observing Linda with the children. Her coldness remained, but beneath it, a shadow of respect and even understanding had begun to emerge. One evening, Linda sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Her hands were in the sand, her heart heavy with doubt and hope all at once. She realized that winning this battle didn't mean destroying an enemy. Sometimes, victory is simply being able to stand beside those you love, even when the world around you remains complicated. The children ran up to her, laughing, their carefree joy a reminder that life goes on. Linda hugged them, feeling a warmth that didn't depend on conflicts or the past. And in that moment, she understood, sometimes an unexpected ending doesn't mean the story is over. It means a new chapter is beginning, one you write yourself, with the people you love, and the choice to forgive and cherish each day.